I expect that there are many here this evening who need very little reminder of the enormous contribution that Dr. Lloyd-Jones made to the world of evangelical student witness, both in this country and abroad. It would be impossible merely to, and very unprofitable, to catalogue all that he has done, all that he had done in writing and speaking, encouraging, guiding. I wanted briefly to highlight 5 aspects of the contribution that he made. First of all, very briefly, that of an office bearer, both in the old IVF, or the modern UCCF, and also in the international movement, the International Fellowship of Evangelical Students. He was a president of the IVF more than once and a vice president for many years. In the international scene, he became prominent in the 30s, and in 1947 he was chairman of the committee which established the International Fellowship. He continued as president of that movement until 1971. Now, to spend no more time on that, but to go on to more familiar territory for us all, it was as a speaker that many, of course, knew him best. Mainly at conferences, from the mid-30s onwards. But it's not only the number of addresses that he made which is significant, but the extraordinary significance historically of some of them. There were many key addresses given, for example, to theological students and to graduates' conferences early on, which set something of the direction of evangelical thought in subsequent decades. And again, and many of you will be aware of this, it was not only in the quality and the character of his addresses, but in his skill in leading discussions which left its mark on so many. If I could refer to one particular address given at the opening of what were then new IVF office buildings 20 years ago, he referred to the dangers of middle age, and I suppose that again reflects something of the medical background, and suggesting that IVF was in middle age and needed to take account of some of the dangers that confronted it. That lecture, that address, is valuable reading today. And one of the things that he emphasized then was that we can learn from history, we can give thanks for history, but we must not rest on it. And that is something which I suggest the UCCF of today would do well to remember, and by God's grace we shall. But it is also a fitting quote to remember tonight for us all, that we give thanks for history, and as he always did, we look ahead. But then also, Dr. Lloyd-Jones was known to many students as an author. His books, of course, always emanating from addresses and sermons that he'd given. The IVP was privileged to be the publishers of many of these, and some of these too are seminal, are critical. For example, the little booklet, Maintaining the Evangelical Faith Today, which is still in print, and which gives guidelines for us on the vexed question of the bounds of cooperation. The basis of Christian unity, similarly. And then the larger works, such as the Sermon on the Mount, which IVP are privileged to have published, and many others. But then we move on to the area of counselor, because it was not only in his public ministry that the doctor was of such extraordinary value and help to many. Pastoral wisdom, strategic insight, theological robustness. Students and staff benefited from these, and may I say, including all 3 general secretaries of the UCCF, Douglas Johnson, Oliver Barclay, and myself. And also Stacey Woods as the General Secretary of the International Fellowship. Stacey Woods, too, was a friend and an intimate of the doctor's and benefited enormously from his fellowship and his guidance. I could add that when I was here in Westminster Chapel 20 years ago, I used to have many discussions with the doctor on the problems confronting the student work in South Africa. And it was subsequent to that we were able to establish that movement on clear evangelical lines, which was not the case at the time. And I remember those discussions with gratitude. And that brings me really to the fifth area that I wanted to mention in relation to students, and that is the role of the chapel here in the life of students. Thousands of students have benefited from the ministry here, from the ordinary ministry of in the congregation week by week, including many overseas students. Hundreds have passed through this chapel while they have been students here in London. And again, I must say that I was one. It was as an overseas student that my wife and I were first welcomed here, and where the ministry meant so much to us. And there are many others. Many have been converted here. Many greatly influenced in their theology. Many now in the ministry of the gospel. But why were these things of such extraordinary significance? First of all, let me suggest that there was the great clarity of thought under Scripture which the doctor brought to his exposition, which was so valuable to students. Clarity of thought was encouraged, and so important for students, academic pride was abased. Doctrine was presented as something which was moving and practical, which was to grip us and inspire us and fire us. Then, and again of such great importance in students threatened by the hostile intellectual environment in which they so often move, there was fearlessness in the presentation of the truth. The doctor feared no one and encouraged us to do the same. But I would add that there was with the doctor and in his thinking that ability to discern the pivotal point in a discussion or in a problem, to discern what question which, if answered, would resolve the issue and lead to clarity. The gift of knowledge and discernment that has already been referred to. This fearlessness, this discernment of the crucial issues, it seems to me, are well encapsulated, as regards Dr. Lloyd-Jones, in the great words of Martin Luther. If I profess with the loudest voice and clearest exposition every portion of the truth of God, except precisely that little point which the world and the devil are at that moment attacking, I am not confessing Christ, however boldly I may be professing Christ. Where the battle rages, there the loyalty of the soldier is proved, and to be steady on all the battlefield besides is mere flight and disgrace if he flinches at that point. By God's grace, we believe he did not flinch.